Thank you for that lovely introduction, Imke. My name is indeed Suzanne Hommerson. I work at the Eindhoven University of Technology as a policy officer, mainly working on compliance topics, medical, ethical, and well, also on artificial intelligence, and then specifically also the AI Act. And what it entails, what it actually means for you as an organization. So just curious for me, who is familiar with the AI Act? A little bit, yes. Who is worried or somewhat like confused of how to implement the AI Act? A couple of things, yeah, all right. Who's absolutely sure, like, I know what to do? That's no one, okay. Then my presentation will probably, hopefully, will be useful. Just one slide of a little bit of an introduction, because most of it is somewhat maybe a little familiar. And then I try to line out the work that we did at, actually what we're doing at the university in a couple of steps to think of. I'm not a legal expert. I really try to make this a practical presentation and tell you what we did from a practical point of view. So a little bit on the AI Act. What is it? Well, it is a European regulation. And a regulation in European context means that it's directly applicable to all the member states. So if you're compliant here with the AI Act in the Netherlands, then you're also compliant in France, in Spain, and all the other countries in the European Union. Now, the reason, actually the purpose of this legislation is to boost innovation, to boost artificial intelligence into our daily practice, into our systems. But the EU would not, of course, be the EU if they also did not stress the focus on doing it in an ethical way, in a responsible way, and also safe way that respects fundamental rights of the users of artificial intelligence. Furthermore, it has a life cycle approach, meaning that it's valid from the moment you are collecting your data for your AI system until deployment, and also after deployment when the AI system is in place. Now, this legislation took a long time to make, but it has been fully approved from August this year. And then you have a little bit of a transition period of when it will actually go into full force. This is going to be done stepwise, so 6 months, actually it's now 4 months, 3 months from now, the prohibited technologies will be then need to go off the market if there are any. There's 12 months for the general purpose AI tools, and then 18 to 24 months of fully transition period when the full Artificial Intelligence Act will be in place, and that will be August 2nd, 2026. So that's on the Artificial Intelligence Act. Now, when we start, I was like, okay, how do I prepare? So what we did is we identified the AI systems in our organization and also the intended use. Now, of course, you know that we do a lot of research on artificial intelligence, but we also have, well, not a lot, but some artificial intelligence applications in our day-to-day business. One, of course, is a form of ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. Like, who's working here? Who has this in their company, like a license? Yeah, that's a lot of people, of course. But what's maybe also specific, and a specific AI system for us that we're using is a tool called, or a form that is called learning analytics. Does anyone know what learning analytics is? Yes, I see some people nodding. Yep. It's basically a data-based tool or tools in which you actually try to predict study outcomes. And then, of course, you can help students with their helping in their study process. The definition of AI systems, in that sense, is a little bit complicated. In that sense that it's sometimes not always clear what an AI system is. What I would like to do maybe is ask one or two people, like based on this definition, Could you maybe like identify 1 or 2 AI systems in your organization? Yeah? Sorry? Grammarly? Ah, yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Someone else? Depot? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay, so that's basically also the first thing that you do. Now, when a specific learning analytic tool that we use is we, for example, check at a learning platform and we see how many clicks there are at that learning platform and then predicting whether a specific student would pass the exam or not pass the exam. And then the intended use could be like, oh, you want to give feedback to the specific student to say like, based on your behavior, you could pass maybe your exam, or maybe you need to study a bit more. That could be an intended use. But another intended use could, for example, be to have these results and provide feedback to the teacher saying like, okay, based on the behavior of your students, it's very likely that your students will pass or not pass. So you really have to look into the intended use of the AI system that is being deployed in your organization. Because based on that intended use, you can determine your risk classification. Now, your risk classification, the AI Act has set up into 4 systems. It's not always very easy and very obvious where in the pyramid your AI system will fall. On the top, you see a lot of like unacceptable risks. So these are going to be like forbidden technologies. So, for example, emotion recognition in the workplace, except for safety or military purposes, is prohibited. Now, you don't have to think a lot about, is it my AI system unacceptable risk or not, because there's just basically a list of all these forbidden technologies and you can browse through it. Now, most of the majority of the text within the AI Act involves high risk requirements, and we'll go into that a little bit later. So if it's not high risk, then you could see like whether it's limited risk or it's minimal risk. If you have limited risk, then you have just a small potential for harm. This is often like the tools that interact with humans, so your chatbot, your deep fakes. Now, for these category AI, there's just transparency obligations, and we'll go into that a little bit later, but that's more as important. And then they think that the majority of the AI systems will fall into the minimal risk category, such as your spam filters or powered video games. And then you only have voluntary standards to adhere to. So if we dive a little bit deeper into this high-risk category, you see that they fall into 2 classes. One is a safety component of products that already require a CE conformity. So you can think of medical devices. And if you want to bring a medical device on a product, I know there are people from Philips here, they know everything about that. Then, of course, you have to go through an entire trajectory to demonstrate that you adhere to all the regulations that are in place. So then you can also think of machines, automated cars, robots, but also automatic tools. So there's also a list for that. The second category, high-risk systems, depend on the area you are deploying your AI system. So if you do that in the judicial system or critical transportation, vocational training, so educational systems, migration, job selection, like, for example, tools that go through your resumes and see like, okay, this person might be suitable for the job or not suitable for the job. Police, law enforcement, but also access to financial aid, financial tools, financial services, I should say. So when I go back to the learning analytics AI tool, then you see that for us, this is a high-risk tool because it really determines, it helps, could give personalized advice to students. So this is part of a high-risk system. But you also see that, of course, a lot of government institutions where people are involved, these are really like the high-class areas that you can think of. This is basically the same, but then in writing, so for later you can read it through instead of looking at the pictures. Step 3 is really about your role then in the AI system, and identified 4 roles. We have a provider, a deployer, an importer, and a distributor. Now, I don't want to go too much into the importer and the distributor role, because I think the provider and deployer are, in this case, much more relevant. A provider is the one, an authority, a public authority, an agency, that doesn't really matter, but who develops an AI system and then puts it into service or puts it on the market. Like putting it on the market is an economical term, but it also means like if you put it into service, that's also it's also a provider. And then a deployer is actually the one that user of the AI system. So, for example, if we build an analytics tool with our researchers and other people who are interested in building AI models, then we are a provider. But then again, we're also deploying it in our organization, so we're also a deployer. But if I, for example, buy my tool from someone else who has a very nice tool that we can implement, then I'm just a deployer. So think of your role. And it's like, are you a provider? Are you making it? Or are you deploying? And then, of course, you have to check the fulfillments, whether you're a provider or a deployer. There is a lot. If you're a provider, then for high-risk systems, in this case, it's very important that you have a quality management system in place. Now, I think most of you know what a quality management system is. It is really like a formalized process of your standards and procedures and responsibility so that you can really trace back the full development of your AI system. Now, with that, of course, you have risk management systems that really goes along, tags together. There are requirements on your data governance. The use of your quality data should be, your quality of your data should be high, of course, whether it's for training, validation, and testing. Also, make sure it's not biased, or you try to get the bias out of that. You ensure robustness, accuracy, and cybersecurity also within your system. And then I've put in red because red is also for the other limited risk systems, is to implement transparency and making sure that it's explainable. Now, for each of these blocks, you can have multiple sessions on that, because I know it's not very easy to say okay, I ensure robustness in my system, or I make my system transparent. Is actually quite difficult. We'll come to that in also just a second. Human oversight is also very important. Again, in the learning analytics case, you can have maybe make sure that you can have automatic emails sent out to students, or you can say hey, the teacher gets a heads up, a warning that a student is not so doing well, we're going to send out an email. So that's a form of embedding human oversight into your system. The documentation that you would need to make up needs to be up to date. So of the thing that you're doing, you're going to set up technical documentation on the design, development, and also testing of the algorithm. So that's basically what the system needs to adhere to. And then there are, of course, a lot of obligations that go into reporting. So you need to register your AI system in an EU database. Now, there's already a Dutch database. Oh, 5 minutes. I have to speed up in place. And this is going to be extended also to a European database. What I'm trying to show here with the blue images is that it doesn't stop when you have your AI system on the market. You have to actively collaborate with your post-surveillance institutions, reporting serious incidents if this may be the case. Now, just quickly go over the deployer requirements. This is really about making sure that the AI system is really doing what's working in the environment where you're deploying it. So one of the things that's important is training, AI literacy, or so to call it, for the people who are using it, ensuring technical and organizational measures in your organization. Also risk management, and one thing that I should not forget is that in some cases you need to perform a human rights impact assessment, especially when you're deploying a tool that is affecting people, could possibly inflict people's personal rights. So also our government needs to perform these kind of assessments when they deploy an AI system. Also transparency requirements. And also do not forget in red, like in the other sheets, that the AI Act is not the only law in place. There are many other laws that you also have to adhere to, and one of the most important one is, of course, the GDPR. I think we're all familiar with the GDPR. These other laws, the overlap with the AI Act. Now, very briefly, for general purpose AI, transparency requirements, disclosing that your content was generated by AI, technical documentation, but also summaries of copyrighted data. I don't know if you were here this morning, but it was a very interesting talk, also where it was where the speaker said that a lot of the big tech companies we're not sure where they obtain their data from. So the AI Act really wants to have a summary of those copyrighted data. Then there's another distinction on high impact foundation models. For these very large systems, you also have a reporting obligation on energy consumption and sufficient detailed summary of training data. And well, we're not really sure how this is going to look like because this was a bit last minute into the AI Act, but do know that a stricter regime than the other AI systems apply to this, and how this will work out will be hopefully much clearer in the nearby future. Now, what is good? What is enough? What do we find transparent enough? That's still under the debate. A lot of things we already know, especially from the technical people, but a lot of that is currently being developed. And the standardization body for the European Commission is called CEN-CENELEC. They also work together with ISO and other standards. And if you go to their website, then you see which standards are now in place and are currently being developed and when you can expect them. I'm not sure if they always keep their deadlines, but this is at least what they forecast. So this is an important website if you're going to implement AI in your organization or developing AI. If you need a conformity assessment, yes, for high risk, yes. What's important here to know is that if you're going to develop a medical device or a car and you have to go to a notified body, then of course the AI system that's a part of that will also go through that conformity assessment. They're still working on the legal aspects of that, but the intention is really then to go to the same notified body and not to 3 or 4 or 5 different notified bodies. That would not make sense. And of course, the limited risk has some form of self-assessment, and low risk, the voluntary standards. But do think that a lot of it is also good for your explainability, but also trustworthiness to do look at these standards and see like this is applicable for me or not. And again, keep in mind the other legislations. Last two slides is on enforcement. What I want you to know is that there's also an AI liability directive. So if something goes wrong, who is to blame? To put it into easy words. This liability directive is a little bit different than normal product directives. And the reason, well, I don't know the reason, but the difference really is that the AI provider has to really show documentation on the trustworthiness of the AI system. So whereas normally if you have damage as a user, the user would have to show like, oh, this is caused by this product. the liability is much more on the side of the provider. So do keep that in mind. So it's very important to do keep the documentation and everything necessary for high-risk systems. Notified bodies, indeed, for certification. There's a EU AI office. That's a central office. We're fostering standards and testing practices. They will also help to coordinate within the national member states, but the surveillance authorities are national. The Ministry of Economical Affairs, together with the Rijksinspectie van Digitale Zaken, is in the lead at this moment. And what we know now is that the persoonsgegevens, they're responsible for privacy. They will be the authority for high-risk systems that do not have conformity. So high risk within taxes, for example, tax office, not the financial ones. Then you have the AFM and the Autoriteit Consumentenmarkten. Or when you're working in infrastructure, then it's the Ministry of Infrastructure and Waterstaat. But this will become clear in the next 2 years. What our government is trying to do is keep the supervision or the surveillance authorities as much as possible within the sector the AI takes place. So taxes then would then Autoriteit Persoonsgegevens, but medical devices would be like Ministry of Health or RIVM or all those kinds of things. So this will become clear in the next couple of years. That's the end of my presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, you can give the clicker to me. Thank you. Thanks, Suzanne. If you think about teach them young, and you work on the university, of course. So on the university, we have a lot of to-be data scientists. Is the AI Act also something you discuss or teach or somehow bring to the students nowadays?
Yes, we have a master in artificial intelligence systems at electrical engineering. And we do teach them about, it's a part of the responsible research. So we teach them a little bit of GDPR, like the fundamentals of GDPR, and also the fundamentals of the AI Act, yes. Not necessarily that they have to do it, because research itself is, and education tools is exempted, but we do want to prepare them for the legislative field or the regulatory field that they're eventually going to work in when they
for the
finish.
real world.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Questions from the audience? Very enthusiastic hand. Go for it.
Hi. Thanks for the great overview. I'm in the medical domain, so medical device industry, and there's a lot of talk about integration of AI algorithms, AI modules. Does the standard describe anything about inheriting some of this responsibility? Are you then a provider, a deployer, something in between? How does that work?
Yeah, this is in general like a bit of a discussion. So if you're fully like responsible for the medical device and the AI that's a medical device, then it's clear. But we do see that sometimes the AI systems are a little bit altered also than that, and that shifts responsibility. So I would say then, like if you would rebrand it into your own system, then you're a provider again. But these are very, very complicated things. I also had many discussions with that, and it's not completely clear to what extent these roles then change. So I think when we have an authority, a post-surveillance authority, I think it would be immediately good to discuss exactly when do you change roles, provider, deployer, in the nearby future. Yeah.
Still a little bit of a gray zone there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here in front, a question. Please wait for the microphone so everybody can hear you. Ooh, yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I about the implementation of AI Act. I see that it's initiated somewhere earlier this year. It's gonna be like fully implemented by 2026.
Yes.
Do you expect that also like by that time whether the rules is still applicable? Because also like we see that last time there is a last minute addition to the AI Act. Do you expect something to be like evolving also during that timeline and afterwards, and how we keep ourselves updated with that usually?
interesting question. Um, yeah. So the AI Act, as it is now, the text will indeed will go into full force. But I think the technology developments are going so fast now at the moment. So what I see is what I think is could that a lot of new technologies would pop up in the next 2 years, and we're fully unprepared. So I'm in that sense, I'm not sure if in 2 years it will still be sufficient enough to regulate those kind of things. There is some room for adaptation within the regulation itself. You call that like a delegating act. This is like, okay, this needs to become clear in the meantime. So there's a lot of tweaks in terms of standards and extra things that you can do. So I do think there will be modifications in the upcoming years. But that's my educated guess, of course. Yeah.
Over there. Good throw. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation as well. The AI Act has been introduced indeed to boost innovation. I do think that can help for medium to larger businesses. We ourselves are an AI company, so I'm not really afraid. I think we can work it all out. But how do you ensure that smaller MKBs that don't have their basis in AI or data science to also still be able to innovate? Because it comes with a lot of extras also for MKBs. So what are your top tips for the audience here today?
Yeah, there was a very strong lobby from startups because they said like it's really impossible for us to comply. Yeah? Like bigger companies can have 10 regulatory persons, but startups of course cannot. And then like having a complete overview of the field. So first, there are a couple of adjustments in the text that, especially for small companies and startups, that they have better access to regulatory sandboxes. I know regulatory sandboxes are environments in which companies can experiment and together with law enforcement to see whether their technology can be put into the market, integrating with help all those regulations. So that's one thing. The penalties are less than other companies. That's one thing in the text, but what I do think for myself is that I think we really need to collaborate. I think you can have a lot of startups maybe pull together and say like, okay, you have 1 or 2 regulatory persons who can help all of these startups instead of 1 person for each startup, for example. So pooling resources would be an interesting thing. The other thing is, I do believe in lobby. I do think it's important that you speak up and together and organize and also say to our legislators, like, this is really impossible. You're creating a lot of administrative work. I do think the government at some point, I do think that our governments listen. That's important, but they need to hear from you. That's just on the top of my head, 2 things.
Yeah, because you mentioned the regulatory sandboxes.
Yes.
Recent discussions were made on that indeed. I was also present in those. And how I now understand them is, as a smaller company, you can sign up, but there's also risk of joining them because you need to be compliant all the time, and you are not. It's not necessary to do it. It's just for your own feeling to see if you can confirm or not.
Yeah.
But participating in it also brings an inherent risk for if your controls are not set up correctly. Because because the sandbox needs to stop directly once you have breached some violations according to the sandbox.
Yeah.
Maybe a good point. I think not directly a question, and we need to bring it to a closing now. So thank you very much. Give her a round of applause.